the truth started to settle down. Devoted scientists had achieved another miracle. And today, many million babies have been born thanks to in vitro fertilization, and many million families have known happiness after many years of anguish, fear, and depression. We are very proud and honored to have Professor Robert Edwards with us today, the man who made the miracle, together, of course, with the late Dr. Patrick Steptoe. We are very proud to have him with us today, and we have totally dedicated this evening's event for honoring his achievements, and we hope that you will all enjoy tonight's activity. We want to thank Professor Edwards for making up the time and effort to be with us, despite his various commitments and engagements. We have celebrated with him 20 years of IVF in Morocco, 25 years of IVF here, and today we are again celebrating 30 years of IVF. To him and to all of us, we say happy anniversary and very happy returns of the occasion. And tonight, I'm very pleased that we are celebrating this occasion with many of the world dignitaries and great scientists. We will have with us shortly Professor Luca Gianaroli, the President-elect of the European Society of Human Reproduction, Dr. William Umbelet, the head of the ERCH's Task Force on Fertility in Developing Countries. I want to nominate him in person. I did this morning, but I'll say it again for those who are not with us. Professor Boutros Rizk, who is the member of the International Relations Committee of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, Dr. Hamid Rashwan, who has missed the plane, the executive director of the International Society, the FIGO, the International Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Dr. Faisal Abdelgadir, the consultant at large for the United Nations Population Fund activities, Dr. Cheryl van der Poel from the WHO headquarters in Geneva. We are also very pleased to have with us Professor Xianglin Tan, chairman of McGill University and founding chairman of the International Society of IVF, Dr. Michel Abu Abdallah and Professor Muhammad Abulghar, founding chairman of the Middle East Fertility Society, Dr. Luciano Nardo, chairman of the Mediterranean Society for Reproductive Medicine, Professor Antonio Pellicer, the founding chairman of the Instituto Valenciano de Infertilidad, Dr. Carl Nigren, chairman of the International Collaboration for Monitoring ART, ICMAT, Dr. Geeta Nargund, who also could not be with us today, but she's with us in spirit, chairperson of the International Society of Natural Cycle and Mild Stimulation, IVF, Dr. Gautam Alabadia, the General Secretary of the World Association of Reproductive Medicine, WORM, Professor Abdelmegid Ramzi, the Vice President of the International Association of Maternal and Neonatal Health, Professor Adolf Schindler, founding chairman of the Egyptian Society, the German Egyptian Society for Obstetrics and Gynecology. We're also very happy to have with us Professor Hakan Yareli and Professor Timur Gurgan, the past and present chairman of the Turkish Fertility Society, Professor Jihad Unlu, chairman of the Turkish German Gynecological Association, Dr. Samir Abbas, who also could not come, but he's with us in spirit, the chairman of Saudi Fertility Society, Dr. Jassim Al-Hijji, the chairman of the Kuwait Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Professor Marwan Al-Halabi, chairman of the Syrian Fertility Society, Dr. Ahmad Abu Jawde, on behalf of the Lebanese Fertility Society, and Dr. Mohammed Al-Mahishi, who is coming soon, representing the Libyan Fertility Society. In addition, we are also very happy to have with us Professor Nabil Abdel Hakim Darwish, chairman of the Egyptian Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Professor Mukhtar Topozada, the chairman of the Egyptian Fertility Society, Professor Ahmed Rashid, the chairman of the Egyptian Menopause Society, Professor Ahmed Darwish, chairman of the Egyptian Post-Fertility Society, Professor Azdina Osman, who is coming soon, chairman of the Egyptian Fertility Care Society, and Professor Mohammed Mohtaz, the chairman of the Egyptian chapter of the Fetal Medicine Foundation, as well as Professor Amr Nouri, representing the Egyptian Representative Committee of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. We'd like to thank them all. We'd like to thank you all for being with us today on this memorable occasion. Together, we want to thank Professor Edwards for making up the time and effort to be with us, despite his various commitments and engagements. We have celebrated with him, as I say, 20 years of IVF, 25 years of RTF, and today we are again celebrating 30 years. To him and to all of us, we say happy anniversary and very happy returns of the occasion. Now, tonight, we are going to have to pay tribute to Professor Edwards, three of our eminent people. Professor Klaus Dietrich from Lübeck in Germany is going to say his something about the the contribution of Professor Edwards. Then it will be followed by Professor Boutros Rizk, who is now in Alabama, but who spent a good time of his life working with Professor Edwards in Cambridge. And then Professor Osama Shawi, who has made a presentation on the different contributions of Professor Edwards. We have many people who want to thank Professor Edwards, and one of them is the governor of the Governorate of Alexandria, General Adil Habib, who unfortunately could not be with us, but on his behalf we have General Aizat Shaban, who is the Vice Governor of Alexandria Governorate, and who would like to present you with the emblem of Alexandria Governorate. So can we come up here, please? Thank you. So this was the official part. Now we come to the scientific part. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Professor Klaus Dietrich, and I would love him to come up and tell us how he knew Professor Edwards and what were his memories.
Can somebody help me, please, with the slides? Yes? Yeah? Here you come. This. So, Professor Edwards, dear Bob, ladies and gentlemen, it is really an honor for me to say a few words about 30 years of IVF and also about Bob. We know each other more than, I think, 25 years. We are an old couple in a way. And it is important for me to stay here and to stand here and say a few words. Of course, we are here together for the 30th birthday of Louise Brown. You can see her here crying. And on the right side, you see the scientific fathers of this first IVF baby. It's Professor Patrick Steptoe and Professor Edwards reporting on a press conference about this first delivery. And of course the newspapers at that time were full of this lovely Louise, and they also wrote a very short letter to the Lancet, Bob and Patrick, about the first birth after the reimplantation of a human embryo. This was a letter to Lancet in 78. And Bob is not only the scientific father of IVF, but also of many related scientific topics. And I just want to mention a few of them. They were also published, these topics, in the journals which he founded. So here you can see some of the milestones. I think there are only a few areas in medicine where the progress which could be obtained was so fast as in reproductive medicine. It started in the 60s, and then, of course, as we heard already, 78, the first IVF baby was born. And then many developments came out of IVF around the world, which were influenced by Bob, like cryopreservation, like pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, and also in vitro maturation, and as we heard this morning, also stem cells, embryonic and also adult stem cells. So he was very active over these 50 years, and especially on in vitro maturation, he published already in '65 in the Lancet first report on, and could show us that in vitro maturation of oocytes, meiotic maturation, is possible. So, and also in vitro maturation is now everywhere. We heard today by S.L. Tan, who is one of the pioneers in this field, where we stand with IVM, and I'm sure there will be a further development in the next years. So where are we now in IVF? As you heard already, up to 2004, nearly 2 million babies were born after IVF and 800,000 after ICSI. It was not so clear this morning, do we have 4 million or 7 million? So we are between these maybe 5.5 million IVF babies, which means for many couples with hopeless infertility that they got their own baby. So the birth rate per cycle, and this is the most important figure which we have to tell our patients after IVF, is in Germany, I have to say that, 21% from the German IVF registry. Of course, these figures can be improved, and there are many ways and possibilities. In Germany, it's a bit difficult because of our strict embryo protection law. But we also have to compare these figures always with the in vivo fertilization birth rate per cycle, which is a method which still is practiced. And this in vivo fertilization rate and birth per cycle is about 24%. So we are not so very far away from nature. Maybe we will be better. We have to work on this. Another important event in the last century was the birth of ESHRE. And as you all know, Bob is a father of this society, which started in '84 during the Third World Congress of in vitro fertilization and embryo transfer in Helsinki. Bob asked scientists and clinicians of Europe to come together and to do something against the American power in fertility. Because most of the new developments like IVF and many other things, ovarian stimulation, they come from Europe. And therefore, it was important to gather the scientists and clinicians in Europe. So we first met in '84, and it was an important day for ESHRE, the 2nd of September in '84 in the Westmoreland Hotel in London, and there Bob liked to write minutes about meetings, and these are the first minutes of the second meeting of the temporary committee of ESHRE from the 2nd of September in the Westmoreland Hotel. And here you see the persons who were present: Pedro Barry, of course, Bob Edwards as the chairman and founder, Pedro Barry, Jean Cohen, we discussed about him today, Giorgio Crosignani from Italy, me and Mr. Geraci from Italy, Koskimis from Finland, and Neri Laufer from Israel, Lidholm from Sweden, Masouras from Greece, and Arne Sunde and André von Steidecker. So these were the founding members of ESHRE, and we discussed at that time the aims of ESHRE, which was to study and discuss all aspects of human reproduction and embryology, from conception to birth. And of course, publication is important, and Bob was a founder of these 3 important journals: Human Reproduction, Molecular Human Reproduction, and Human Reproduction Update. These journals are still the leading journals, beside IVM Online, still the leading journals in the field of obstetrics and gynecology, and this is due to the immense work of Bob Edwards. We also founded special interest groups in endocrinology, embryology, and so on, just to come together and to discuss the scientific problems. We wrote guidelines, and we have annual meetings, workshops, and symposia. And we had the privilege in Germany to organize this first annual meeting in Bonn. This was in '85. We had only half a year, 6 months, to organize this meeting, which was not so easy, but about 700 clinicians and scientists around Europe and also from overseas came to Bonn in June '85 to participate in this important meeting. And at that time, it was possible to shake hands to every participant. This was a reception in the so-called Redoute in Bonn. Here you see me. I was a bit slimmer, I have to say that, and Patrick Steptoe. We shake hands with about 700 participants. Today it is impossible. At the last meeting of ESHRE, we were about 6,000 participants. But it was very important at that time. Here you see Jean Cohen, who was a chairman-elect at that time, and Bob Edwards, and also Reverend Dunstan. We heard about both of them this morning, and they died, unfortunately, in the last 2 years. But it shows the important relationship of Bob, which he had to the church, and to discuss ethical problems with the church. Here you see on the right Bob. I'm sure the left person you will not recognize. It's not one of the Beatles, it's Arne Sunde, one of the chairmen of ESHRE from Norway. And this was, of course, in '85. He changed completely since that time. This was the first executive committee. Robert Edwards, of course, Jean Cohen, and the secretary, and André van Zijdekem, was a very effective and efficient working group. Arne Sunde was also a member of this scientific committee. And this was a first issue and abstract book of human reproduction from this Bonn meeting, from the first ESHRE meeting. The fetus does not look very healthy, I think, but this journal grew very fast, and we know how successful these 3 journals Bob founded were now and today. So we had very hard meetings every year on Capri, and with the Capri ESHRE workshop group. And here you see 5 of the chairmen of ESHRE: André van Zijdekem, Bob, Jean Cohen, Giorgio Crosignani, and me. And of course, we are a growing group of chairmen and also past chairmen. You see the red ties, which I have today. These are the past chairman's ties. And here you see 10 chairmen of ESHRE: André, Bob, Jean, Lynn Fraser, Jose Egoscu, who also died 2 years ago, Basil Talatsis from Greece, and Giorgio Crosignani. And now you see the change of Arne Sunde on the left sitting, and Hans Evers from. So these were the 10 past chairmen at the Madrid meeting, which was in 2004. So unfortunately, and I have to say that very honest, unfortunately Bob left our 3 journals, but he is never tired. He founded a new journal, which was Reproductive Biomedicine Online, which is today also one of the most successful journals in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. And to be honest, I think it's even better than human reproduction. And this journal is also very successful and has now an impact factor of 3.2. And as you know, Bob was always interested in ethics and bioscience and life, and has printed or edited supplement to Reproductive Biomedicine Online, which you can see on the right. So I think Bob has influenced a lot in this important field of reproductive medicine, and here you see some further steps which have to be taken to make this procedure more successful. And all these procedures were influenced by Bob, and also by the publication of these procedures in his journal. And if we continue successfully with this work, I'm sure that in front of our clinics, we will have the same picture as we have here 50 years ago in Germany, full wagons for children and happy parents. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Bob, for your work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Klaus. Professor Dietrich, of course, Klaus Research is a past president of the European Society of Human Reproduction, of Human Reproduction and Embryology, ASHRI. May I take this opportunity before Dr. Peter Risk, Professor Peter Risk, tells us something. The Minister of Health, His Excellency Professor Hatem Gabali, was actually planning to be with us, but unfortunately they have today a cabinet meeting, so he could not make it. But on his behalf, the the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Health and the head of the Ministry of Health in Alexandria wants to present Professor Edwards with the Thank you. Dr. Salam Ad-Menem, of course, is the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Health in Alexandria, and he's very supportive of many of our activities in Alexandria.
These two are absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Now, Professor Boutros Rizk qualified from Cairo University, but then he made the right move to go to Cambridge. And he was luckier than me. I worked at King's, but he worked with the big boss. So he was working with Professor Bob Edwards at Cambridge. And we are very pleased that he's with us today. Now he's, of course, the chairman of Division of Reproductive Medicine in University of South Alabama in Alabama, USA. So Peter, please. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is more than a privilege and more than an honor for me to be with you this evening. As a matter of fact, I sincerely and honestly say that there is no man that I would like personally to honor him more. And I would feel that I myself am very privileged to be even considered to be standing here and saying a few words about, and that is Professor Edwards. I think to join me today is not only the people in this audience, my eminent colleagues, my guests, the professors and the chairs, but also somewhere of 4 million children that has been born as a result of half a century of his personal work dedication against the tide of all waves, against the tide of politics, against the tide of conservative religion, against the tide of finances, against the tide of everything. And he achieved it because he believed in what he wanted to do, and because at the end it was really God's mercy on all of us that we are in this position. I would not present his contribution to the European Society, which the past president of the Society has beautifully presented. And if we would like to discuss his scientific achievements, I believe Professor Salam will have to put a separate congress for that. It has to be a week long. So I'm not going to present the journals or the books or the papers or publications. I would like to give a tribute about the human, the person, the individual, Professor Edwards, which we are all privileged to have known him, have worked with him, have heard him, and have been inspired by him today. This tribute really is been well deserved and well honored in all the activities that we have seen, whether from the Society, Professor Didrich, whether from the collaboration with all the Middle East, Professor Salem, Professor Abulgar, whether from the bringing clinicians like us to a field which is really new, exciting, and honoring. I think this is the man that has made it possible for all of us to be this evening in this room, an honor that we do not really have not earned. I would like to bring some of the figures that he himself would have liked to bring with. I obviously put on the top side his life partner, Dr. Patrick Steptoe, a great clinician and a pioneer. But really, I envy him because he had the opportunity to collaborate with the world's best scientists and perhaps the leading scientists of this century. On the other side, I want to put the American equivalent, if I may, Professor Edwards, to Patrick Steptoe, but also a good friend that he himself likes and enjoyed working with is Howard Jones, also a legend. He's actually celebrated his 95th birthday recently. And I might say as well, very briefly, that he's written an introduction to one of our books recently at the age of 95. He gave a concise and clear statement that we cannot match. I put down also in this picture some of the figures. I put Gregory Pincus, which I was delighted to hear Professor Edwards this morning by sheer chance, bringing him as one of the people who inspired him. I must tell you, however, two things: that he has delayed the work on IVF by the wrong conception that it took 12 hours for the eggs to mature. He worked on rabbits for years, and he thought that it takes 12 hours for the egg to mature to reach the stage of the metaphase 2. And it took Bob several years of work and diligent work to show that this is about 36 hours, an achievement that in itself would have been a Nobel Prize achievement as well. The work of his life cannot be quantified. Those clinicians had the honor of being around him and with him. I have known from him today as well that some of the first oocytes that were fertilized and seen were given by also some of his other colleagues from Glasgow, Ian Donald as well. And he himself thinks of John Rock as a leading scientist and pioneer. I picked them by chance. I spent some time to pick them one by one, and I am thrilled to see that they have all fit his taste and his work. But he stands among them, and he stands among us as somebody bigger and larger than all that, by his character and not only by his geniusness. His genius is known to all of us. If we spend this evening talking about his scientific achievements, I do not believe it would be concluded tonight. But this is not really what he brings him to the light. What is bringing him to the light that he brought us all. I honestly, sincerely believe that there is no man, certainly from the UK and certainly from Europe, that enjoys the popularity of this man in this part of the world. Professor Salem mentioned I graduated under Professor Abulgar from Cairo in '81 and moved to work with Professor Edwards in the States. I do not believe that I know somebody in the 3 continents that I've worked with that enjoys this sincere popularity. It's a popularity from the heart. It is not a presidency by forcing thing, but it is somebody that every one of us has it deep in his heart. And I cannot really say more than it is genuinely in everyone's hearts. What can I summarize this man? I mean, how can you describe the person that you would like to really speak about his life achievement? Maybe I would say that he's the father of modern reproduction. I think this is a true statement. I think that everything that we have heard today, we have seen. I was thrilled to see the in vitro maturation from 65 article. I was thrilled that you've brought that today. Everything that we've done, the blastocysts, all the leading things. I mean, he's done them in the 50s and 60s. Inner cell mass, stem cell. I mean, this is work from half a century ago, and we're reading about it as novel things that we are trying to achieve today and trying to be successful in, and really Bob Edwards has done all that at the time. He's been a moral ethicist and a philosopher. I mean, all his life. He's never taken it as sheer hard bench science, although he qualifies among the first in the world, but this really was not his. I known him also as a person who has given time to public service. I lived in Cambridge for 3 years, and he's been on the council of the city of Cambridge. He's walked from a door to a door. He's asked poor and rich people what do they want to see in the city council. Many things that that many of us did not give the time to, although we were all busy with things. But at the end, we look back at what we have done and see what time did we give the things to do. And he's managed to do that in the middle of discovering, IVF, in the middle of people fighting it down and trying to pin him down, in the middle of writing textbooks that are beyond belief. I mean, when we put together a book and that is 50, 100 chapters, we think it's a lifetime achievement. This is a man that has written, when we started our fellowship, what used to be called the Bible of human reproduction. Single-handed, not 200 authors and so on. So in reality, this is the individual that started the societies. He started the European Society, a big effort. The European Society soon brought in its folds everybody around, and everybody loved it and attended it because of Bob. I mean, he was that character that he would make you feel not exactly that you would shake hands with every members, because it's not possible. Certainly brought a new era into editorialship. I've working with him, and I for years. I have never seen an editor that has this capability in his mind. Every article was there. I mean, you have 2,000 articles in the journal in that year. Every article he knows about, he would come and say, have you seen this, have you seen that? Everything is ready and available and does not need even a click of the mouse before the era of computers. Certainly a team builder. Certainly the first person to bring clinicians to work with him and admire him and enjoy working with him. And I can tell you that among the people that I miss, and Professor Tan, SL10, would testify to that among the fellows that were with us at the time, all of them would have loved to be here this evening, would have loved to see you really take some of the credit and so on. To read that with great glory. I have lots of stories to say, because I'm going only to talk about the person, Bob, not about his science. But one time, and I was the most junior fellow in the whole team, I was seeing the last patients at 4 or 5 in the evening, and he came carrying the stains. We were doing some immunohistochemistry on endometrial protein. One of his, Carol Manners, one of his PhD students, was finishing her PhD. And he took the underground from London, took the train from Cambridge, underground from London, carrying all the stains himself and so on, to the clinic. At the end, I was on the 4th floor. He got tired, sat on the stairs of the 4th floor, waiting for me to finish. So the medical director came out, said, Professor Edwards, who are you waiting for? So I told him, I'm waiting for Peter to finish. So he said, cancel the clinic, get him out here, and get started. This is the man that puts us all together, and has really had the admiration. His achievements, degrees, certainly are underscored. I certainly would have loved to have seen him receive the Nobel Prize. Even as he knows, we have done a great effort to counter the tide against that. Although we have not succeeded, it has been more than earned. A few personal things. I think many of you. I found this morning that he was not actually born in Leeds, but just outside Leeds, in a little village called Batley, outside Leeds, in 1925. He's celebrating his 83rd birthday, and we look forward to that great celebration. Educated in Manchester and then served in the army, served in Palestine, in Jordan, in Egypt, and Iraq. And when I know that, I feel how he feels the ties with these places. He tells me one of the things he's learned in Palestine and Jordan, that when they give you coffee to drink, at the end you have to turn the cup upside down. If you don't turn the cup, they keep giving you again. So the first evening they poured the first cup, and he had the second cup, and at the end of the evening he wanted to get out, and then somebody told him, if you're done, just turn the cup. I think this is he's been here on this land before we were born. Certainly, his degrees are numerous, the honorary and the earned. Certainly, his years as well. I mean, as he described, he finished as a soldier, and I quote his own words, said, "I was a soldier, penniless, without degree, and running to do a PhD, and looking for areas that were not even there." I mean, we're talking of 1951. We're talking of an era that science was still behind, and so forth. If I put you the degrees, and I must say that his secretary sent some to me without him knowing. I would have to put you another series of slides for those degrees, but it suffices to say that there's no university that I'm aware of that would not be considering that it would be its great honor to give him an honorary DSc today or in the last 10 years. These are only the awards that he has won in the last 120 days. So this is as recent as today. Many institutions are still doing some catching up, and I'm afraid to say there is a lot of catching up of us to do. In public service, I mentioned his service to the city of Cambridge. I know firsthand that he walked from house to house to talk to people and so on. So in terms of public service, this was a real public service. I look at our shallow achievements and look at that with great admiration. I think it's a great personal, and he did it from his heart. He wasn't after any, there was really no gain there whatsoever. Certainly one event, and I verified it from one of his dearest colleagues, the late Dr. Elliot Phillip from London, and he was one of the greatest admirers for Professor Edwards. He said, don't believe the man who says put one embryo at a time. He said he put 37 embryos in mice and managed to get the mice to have 37 embryos at one time. I guess the motive at the time was that there was a sincere belief among scientists that you cannot super-ovulate certain animals. So they were starting to see at the time, could you super-ovulate a mammal, for example, because it was thought that there was a cutoff and would not respond. So he certainly did that, and he said that after him, people in Sweden, like Professor Gemzell and so forth, give pituitary gonadotropins before discovery of the gonadotropins to women, and they got 4 and 5 and 6 and 8. So they believed him when he said yes, they do produce multiples. So the joke is real that he has proven that you can produce more than an egg at a time. I will just put that to see his dearest colleague, Dr. Septo, at a time which they were the attraction of the world, but also it was an upstate guy. There is no point for me to add more to Professor Didrich. Great elaboration. He founded the societies. All his fellows, who are now heads almost all the departments in the UK that I know of, had the delight and the pleasure of working with him. This was no boss, or so. This was a leader of the hearts. Well, he was one man successful in bringing a team together. And we all know that it's difficult to work with clinicians, but across the continents he's done that. He's worked in the States, he's worked in the UK, and although we know all about American physicians and so forth, he had the admiration of all the American physicians that he had. He worked in Chapel Hill, he worked at Johns Hopkins, with Howard Jones and others, and made some landmark publications in the States. And until today, one of the moments that they feel that they should pay tribute to Europe is because of Bob. Picture, I bring it because of people dear to his heart, not just because of Louise Brown. But not only Louise Brown, Professor Edwards, 4 million children would like also, if each of them sends you a flower today, I think you will have 4 million flowers to be added. I will not add to the Louise Brown. I think it was beautifully said. This was Alistair, the first boy. Louise was the first girl, and Alistair was the first boy born at Hull. I think even Dr. Steptoe stimulated one patient 3 times, and she failed, and we did then at the Hallam her IVF, and she named her child Robert Patrick Peter. So I keep that under my CV. I online it 7 times, for that. This is with Sheena, Dr. Septo's wife, putting a memorial for him in 1989, a year after his pass away. The writer, I don't know how many books. I have lost count, but I've spent time in our library getting the old copies, and I've managed to find copies, before the times that I could read, could read English. But certainly his publications are old and new. He has put the last 60 pages publication in RBM online last week, and he has books that dates before us even learning. I don't know what to put in at the end. I also promised Dr. Didrich to get him some pictures when he was younger than that, and slimmer, as he said. But all the people in these pictures would pay tribute and homage to one man, which is Bob Edwards. He kept us, he kept us going. As a public servant, he was a leader. As an ethicist, he was the first one to put conferences and world congresses on ethics. And working with him, he was higher than those standards. It was not ethics preached, but it was ethics done. He pulled up every fellow to a level beyond his belief. Every one of his students, I think, heads one of the best departments and is all full of of gratefulness to his kindness, to his hard work, and the effort. Well, I mean, I think I would leave you with this picture today, and I would like that everyone in this room would think in their heart what you have done to them, what you have done to their career. I think without you, our careers would have been terribly boring, would have been terribly unsatisfying. The children that has been born because you would like to thank you, and their families would remember you for heart. For generations. I think for moral and ethics and societies, you've built societies. You've put the East and the West together. I honestly do not know anybody from Europe or from the States that enjoys this hard popularity as Professor Edwards does. I think he's in the heart of everybody here and everywhere. Wherever you go, this is a man that have held us all up. I wish you many more happy years. I wish to see not the 30th, but more and more. And I thank Dr. Salem for giving me this glimpse of chance to say thank you. There isn't a man that I would like to thank more than you today.
Yes, I think we thank you very much, Peter, for saying what we all want to say. Now, Cairo University are always jealous from Alexandria University. And although they are presented today by many of the eminent professors, we said Professor Darwish, Professor Abulgar, Professor Sam Hazaki, we have with us today Professor Osama Shawi, who would like to say something on behalf of on the personal side of Professor Edwards. But by the time he will hear, he will finish the presentation. I would like to welcome Professor Aziz Bilal, the Dean of the Medical School of Alexandria University, who has just arrived, and he left something very important, I know, to come and say hello to Baby too. And he was very kind to come in person and present Professor Edwards with the shield of the Medical School of Alexandria. Can I please ask you something?
Professor Edwards, it's a great pleasure for me as a Dean of the Alexandria Medical School to present the shield of the Alexandria Medical School for you, for everything that you have done to humanity. Thank you very much, sir.
Professor Bilal, of course, is professor of ear, nose, and throat. He's trained in America, in Harvard and USC, but he still has good... no. And now it's the time for us to ask Professor Osama Shawi. Professor Osama Shawi, of course, is professor of obstetrics and gynecology in Cairo University. He's one of the leading scientists in Cairo, and we are happy to hear him say something about the human side of Professor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, everybody. I wish you a very pleasant evening tonight. What I'm hearing here today, I'm not an IVF man. I'm not doing the work you are doing, but I'm inspired by the life of the man. It's a difficult task to talk about a legend like Bob Edwards, especially of the people who worked with him. What can I add more? Dr. Hassan Salam was doubting, Osama, you don't know about our business, you have never read his articles, you cannot understand what's an embryo, what's a blastocyst, so what can you say? Let me tell you, I'm going to impress you tonight. Give me a microphone, please, to Professor Edwards. Today, I'm presenting a story of a passion for success. A story of an ambitious young man who challenged tycoons. When I finish what I'll show you, I'm sure I'll find tears in your eyes. Maybe he himself will be amazed by the secrets I'm leaking tonight. So I made my presentation in a cinematic way. This is the BBC News saying that the event happened 11:47, July 25, 1978. You see that the process had been a success. So some wondered if the success had been more luck than real science. There were still doubts about the achievement. And still the medical community and the world were preparing to watch Louisa Brown to see if there were any abnormality that couldn't be seen at birth or any future complications due to this bizarre method of pregnancy that they made. The answer is this. You know who is this beautiful face? This baby is the baby of Louisa Brown. Yet she achieved normal spontaneous pregnancy and she gave birth 1 year ago. But for a twist of fate, the same day she gave birth, the night before she lost Joy Brown, her father. So this happened in 1978. Today, you people, you're coming here to celebrate 30 years of IVF. Celebrating 30 years of a success. But this success was preceded by moments of agony, despair, even failure. This success, behind it were the men. There is definitely many scientists, but there is always a man. Enjoy the music and see the man. I like this painting. I don't know who made it for him, but look at the smile in the face. I'm focusing today on the human being, not the scientist. Bob Edwards, from microcosm to macrocosm. You got what I mean? From working with microscopic structures, he became the legend of the world. Look at the look of determination in his face. Each picture has a meaning. You like yourself, Bob? Very determined to achieve success. And you will realize after the end of my presentation, this man knew that he will succeed. He has the inspiration in the sense that the end of the road is success. This is Professor Abulgar, an international friend. I don't think there is a man photographed, pictured with, like Bob Edwards. Everybody wants to take a picture with him. You see? Look at this picture. This young student bursting with enthusiasm. Do you like the music? Well, Bob, it's not my words. This Bob Edwards' words. All of my slides are quotation. I have to contact all the people who knew him. I made a lot of search on the internet. It was like a PhD. So this is his quotation. 1 million spermatozoa. Out of this cataclysm, but one poor Noah managed that billions minus one might have chance to be Shakespeare, another Newton, a new Donne, but that one was me. Let me take you back, Edwards, to this place. Do you remember this? Sorry, you have to interact with me because I will ask you some help. Do you remember this place? This is the place for student Bob Edwards, but he was not studying zoology. Do you know this? Because, Peter, you said that he was a student for zoology. No. He said, you see this nice young chap? He said, in 1951, this is his words, it was my last year in university at Bangor, North Wales, when I realized that I had a costly mistake. I was on the wrong road in my studies. He was studying something different. I realized that I'm not particularly interested in seeds of barley and seeds of oats, but I'm more interested in seeds of animals, sperms and ovum. 1951, he was just coming released from the military service, spending 2 years as a British soldiers in the Middle East, something in common with Lawrence of Arabia. Most of his colleagues was younger than him. I think anybody in his situation, he would be satisfied that he finished his education and looked to work, but he didn't do this. What he did, he sent a letter. To whom? Do you remember this letter, Bob? That's your letter. It's not a faked one. Look at the picture. Do you remember this man? Yes. He sent a letter to Professor C.H. Waddington, Institute of Animal Genetics, West Mains Road, Edinburgh 9. What you said in this letter, please, tell us, in 1 minute. Yes, he wants to come and do a PhD. Yes. He was not studying human genetics, but after he finished the college, he wanted to continue and to study PhD in something of his interest. Well, 1951. Imagine the life of a young chap, Bob Edwards. How his life at that time, playing tennis in the morning, going to tea time parties afternoon, going to pubs with pretty girls. Let me tell you what he was doing. That's his words from his tongue. Now, I had to solve the problem of money. Do you remember about this? That I was very short in. I labored all day and half the night at hay time in Yorkshire. Journeyed to Wiltshire, I don't know where this place in the world, for harvest. I carried bananas in Manchester docks. I took menial jobs in newspaper offices. I did this until I had accumulated enough cash to pay for my tuition, books, and 3 months lodging in Edinburgh. Do I see tears in your eyes? This is the easy life of the student Bob Edwards. And then he was working in this place. How you pronounce the word? I can't do it. What is this? Douglas Falconer Mouse House. Okay. What he was doing. This man, since the beginning of his life, he wants to inflict changes. He doesn't accept standards. Working with Alan Beatty, am I pronouncing right? I decided to develop a new method to modify chromosomes of the mouse embryo. Peter, this is 1951, okay? He wanted to change the chromosomes of the embryos, thinking that perhaps this work will ultimately would be of practical help to mankind. What about his romantic life at that time? Was he dating young girls? Sorry, I have to leak some secrets, but would you allow me, please? Should I mention names? Okay. So prepare yourself to the flirting life of Bob Edwards. These little rodents demanded all my attention. I hardly had time for dating girls because of the demands of the mice. One reason that these mice are more active sexually and mate at night. He has to sit beside them, watching them doing this. So their habits turned my life into a succession of night shifts. Any stranger walking after midnight behind the Institute of Animal Genetics will have observed lights burning in the falconer, low-slung mouse. Why? Because he was always there. Whatever you say, Peter, about painstaking, I don't think any of us did. I told this story to my son. And continuation to what Peter said, that Bob is Edwards for everybody. I mean, if you go to the supermarket and ask the cashier girl, who is James Watson, she wouldn't know. But if you tell her, do you know the name Bob Edwards? She said, that guy who made the babies in the test tubes, he's known to everybody. I remember I went to the school of my children to give a lecture about success. So I told them, I'm going to tell you a story of a success happened in Manchester, a success of a man in Manchester. He said, yes. Are you talking about David Beckham? I said, no. Somebody else. I thought these young children wouldn't know him. I said, his name is Robert Edwards. Most of them said, yes, the man who manufactured babies in the laboratories. He's known to most of them. That's his life. The young Bob Edwards had icons in his life. Do you remember these faces? You said this. Okay, am I inventing you? You said he's a fan of 4 icons in his life. Mendel, and I can understand this. For me as a doctor, I can know why he loved these people. But the third person, what's his name? You know, you remember the name. The man who made the book about the modification of clouds. He said that he's so, what is new about it? You want to inflict changes also like this man? I bought this book to read it, but I didn't understand anything. Luke Howard, yes. Yes. It's Rutherford. Oh. My PhD is correct. It's not Rutherford. Yes.
Who used to go onto little hills outside Cambridge
Mm-hmm.
and paint the sky because he had no computers in those days.
Yes.
And he invented the names of the word humus, what was the other thing? Humus.
Orpheus.
Yes. And he did those. And other things. I'm not sure he didn't start warm and cold fronts coming any day in right?
Yeah. So Howard, but the grandfather of your wife, of Ruth.
I would say that he was a great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
Then, when I proposed to her, he said to me, I have to warn you, Bob, before he said that I may be in a different world that you may not be happy. So I said, why is that? But I said, they're great physicists, and then one of them is Lord Rutherford. So in my pedigree,
This man.
okay,
That's
so I remember Howard worked before the Nobel. Yet today, we regard as the world's leader contemporary. So my great heroes, I married 2 of them out of the 4.
great.
And finally, her father, when I joined the army, I was getting a commission, and I was sent to the training school. And the thing I enjoyed most of all was the arc of fire of a gun when you fired it. So the bullet would go at a certain speed and then it would start to drop to earth. And this was brilliant. I loved it. When I married Ruth, I discovered the man who had written all this mathematics of this was her father.
So it was not Rutherford, is the great.
When I was
Sorry, this is my, because I said, what is the relation between both? I remember the scene when you met her, you were puffing in your pipe. I was not there, but you were puffing an empty pipe with a pompous way, and then she surprised you that her grandfather is.
something like that. I remember I absolutely shattered. And I nearly walked out.
Yeah.
Because I'd grown up in Manchester,
Mhm.
in a very poor house, where there was no money at all in the 1930s.
Yeah.
It was desperate to live. And then when I found a wife, I was terrified to take her home to my mother, to bury her too, because my mother had such a rough time. But she was lovely and...
Well, so Ruth couldn't resist falling into the gravity of attraction of Bob Edwards, and they got married. After marriage, the first trip going to the United States, Bob goes west. He went to Caltech Institute, California Institute of Technology. It's the same place where our Egyptian Nobel Prize winner Ahmed Zouail. This was, I presume, the first encounter with the West. Going back in autumn 1960, look at this story. It's from his mouth. We had our second daughter, Jennifer. The first is Caroline, I think. One couple whom we loved very much wanted but couldn't have children. When they visited us that autumn and cuddled our babies, I couldn't resist the feeling aroused in them. The tree bore fruits, the clouds carried rain, and our friends forever childless. I think it was their true predicament, along with my occupation about ripening eggs and fertilization, that made me wonder for the first time in my life about practicality of replanting human embryos in the womb of woman. Do you remember this day? You remember your friends. So I'm happy I'm bringing to you the memories, the birth of the concepts in the mind of the man. Well, who is Molly Rose? Anybody know this name? Molly Rose helped Bob in two things. First, that she was responsible for delivery of Sarah. Am I right? Two. Sarah, okay. She was the obstetrician who conducted the birth of Sarah. And Bob couldn't resist to ask her to give him some ovarian tissues to play with. He was begging her, please give me some ovarian tissues so I can do my research. Molly Rose was sympathizing with him, and for the first time, he got into the OR, operating theater. He felt clumsy how to scrub, where to stand. He was afraid to touch instruments, and he took this precious piece of ovarian tissues, going back to the lab and doing research. The name of third daughter is Sarah. Am I right? What is behind the name? Can you tell me in 1 minute? Sarah, the wife of... Exactly. You said this in your book, because Sarah couldn't... I'm studying good, the book, okay. He was trying to fertilize the eggs, but this man was very decisive. Waddington said, I do not want any human egg fertilized here. He didn't say this? Wait until the next one. This man approved. Okay. Okay, I go back. This is... Yes.
Who was influenced by a group of people who were very, very ambitious and who went down in a group and asked them to stop the working.
Waddington was agreeing with you. No, he didn't agree.
This was after Waddington.
Yes.
Not after Waddington. And so this man said he's going to do it. And then, 3 months later, he retired and a man called Peter Medawar.
This man? This is Peter Medawar? Yes.
Wonderful man. I used to know, I don't know very well, and I remember going to him like, Peter, after giving a very serious question, I have been refused permission by the previous man to grow human oocytes in vitro.
Mm-hmm.
He said, forget it, go out and get started. It's important. That was Medawar.
Medawar approved. Okay. So, but basically there was a rejection, okay? They were not allowing him to do what he wanted. So, look what Bob Edwards believed in this. 2 roads diverged in wood, and I took the one less traveled by. Is that right? That's made all the difference. And then he decided he decided to do it. He decided to fertilize a human egg. Listen to the story, and I am sure I'm correct in this. Listen to the story. One day after dinner, so it was at night, I took out the bicycle, not the Jaguar, okay, and rode down Gough Way toward the little research lab where the 3 eggs waiting in culture dish, almost ripe. It was late night when I wheeled my bicycle to the physiology laboratory, climbed out 4 flights graded stairs, hurried through the winding corridors. On my way to lab, I passed the framed photographs of famous Cambridge scientists. They were looking to him. You know, this famous scientist. They were looking fiercely into my eyes. Perhaps I was thinking at that moment, am I going to do history tonight, or will I be thrown in the pages of forgetfulness forever? Did it happen or not? At night, alone, and I think near to the lab there was a cinema, Royal Cinema, and pubs, and usually there is the loud music, but at that night in particular, he was only hearing the ticking sound of the tap water. I was not with you, but you wrote this in your biography, okay? Somebody else with you. Wait for Barry, please. Oops, I forgot from where I may get the sperms for fertilization. So I decided to. Would you like to say? What you decided to do? Let the people know. How could you get the sperms? Oh, really? It was you. Okay. Do I hear applause, please? I'm not inventing the stories. All these real things. Okay? So he fertilized the eggs. And then he was sending letters to the United States, but this time Bob goes west to where is this place? You know, Peter, this place? This is Jones Institute in Baltimore, I think. Okay. He went there, he got some scholarship, he sent them a lot of letters, and the people welcomed him. They said, okay, this is the exact telegram. We will do the best for you. So he packed his clothes, flew to the United States, and after working for a long time in the labs there, expect success. But though through the weeks in Johns Hopkins Institute, I failed to fertilize a single human egg in the lab. I think any normal human being at that moment, he should give up. Go back home, do any kind of business. He failed to fertilize any human egg. Look at his comment, I never gave up. I felt confident that I can solve the problem eventually. Unbelievable determination. Unbelievable trust. I'm telling you, this man knew from the beginning that he will achieve success. It just for him was a matter of time, despite all the opposition that you will see. 1966, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. At that time, it was thought by scientists at that time that spermatozoa need to be exposed to the secretions of the uterus to be capable of fertilizing the egg. Chang, Yanagimashi, names that I don't know, did several works to prove this. Was that true? Okay. So, I presumed, that's Bob Edwards speaking, I presumed that I need to collect human spermatozoa from the woman reproductive tract before using them for attempting fertilization. How we can make this, Peter? So, I invented my secret chamber. Do you know this secret chamber? Have anybody heard about it? Tell us about this secret chamber. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I knew I could mature the sperm, but we could not fertilize the sperm. So I made a little chamber. It would slip through the cervical canal.
Mm-hmm.
It would be loaded with sperm and a seal.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have a porous wrapping around which sperms could get through.
And how can you be sure that the sperms could not come out from these pores? The pores of the chamber, I mean, how they cannot leak out. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it didn't work. And later on we found the trouble was that the chamber was causing inflammation in the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to secrete protein, to break how much protein is free. The uterine lumen, and this was killing the sperm. Now, 2 weeks ago, the London Times had a wonderful headline: Scientists braces sperms in the uterus to give the chance of prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
It was done by my student, Simon Fishel, who works in Birmingham, and I think it will work now. So,
So,
I haven't written to it yet, but I will.
so he invented like a small chamber to put the sperms in, put the chamber into the womb, and take the chamber back, then take the sperms out. Look how he was thinking. Well, I have a lot of stories, but I'm trying to make it short. The first encounter between Bob and Patrick. Bob went back to London while he was sitting in the library, reading in books. He read a magazine article about something called laparoscopy. In the Lancet? Okay. And he read the name of the author, Patrick Steptoe. He catched the phone and he called him and he told him that he wants to do some research with him, and he told him the idea. On the phone, Steptoe said, okay, let's do it. But he didn't call him back again. After 6 months, they were in a Congress, in a meeting, and there was a speaker talking about PCO, and he said the only way to diagnose PCO is by laparotomy. This is the only way. Then a furious chap came, that was Steptoe, and he said, bullshit, that's nonsense. I have a way to look at the ovary by something called the laparoscope. At the end of the session, Edwards hurried to him, said, I am Bob Edwards who called you on the phone since 6 months. Then Patrick told, what took you so long to come back again? Let's work together. Who is this man? That's what I was talking about. That's Babister. To my knowledge, he was making the culture media that was, this true? I don't know. I was not born at that time. Well, I'm very pleased to bring you nice memories like that. So they started collaboration. Bob Edwards was living in Cambridge at that time. Am I right? And Patrick was in Oldham. I've never been in England before, so I don't know the distance. Geographically, the distance is 380 miles, which is about 500 plus kilometers. I measured the distance that Bob Edwards traveled. It was, I'm not exaggerating, it was like traveling to the moon. Am I right? More? Yes. How many days you go and come? How many days a week you go and come from Oldham to Cambridge? Yes. Okay. So, after some time, success in fertilizing egg in vitro had been a decisive step to encourage me to test eggs that had not ripened in culture fluid but in the ovary itself. Until one day, one night, Jane was on duty watching over 4 days old embryos in Oldham while I was in Cambridge. Jane's voice in the phone was excited. She called him in the phone. She said, Bob, something is happening. Things I have never seen before. Please, you must come. Do you remember this night? Yes. Well, after this, he felt that he needs some financial support from the MRC. What's the MRC? Medical Research Council. He sent them a long, long letter telling them about his ambitions in the studies and so, and this was the reply. April 1971, Dear Mr. Bob Edwards, I am sorry to have to tell you that after most careful consideration, the Council came to the conclusion that they could not agree for your request for long-term support. Your vision for implantation of human egg fertilized in vitro considered premature in the view of lack of preliminary studies on primates and deficient in convincing knowledge. They refused to help him. Sure, that's all yours. Yeah. I have many blows, yes, for you. Yeah. Who dares not to like you?
because he had been in Cambridge in the vet school and he had all the medical students to teach reproduction. When I went sort of laboratory where the students were actually being taught. So in the end, I took over, and I think it was a very angry project, and it was very hard, even at Cambridge. And so that is what, and they said to Patrick Skelton, it was dangerous, and she would never use it, and he said to me, I should put the monkey first, but I knew that the spinal canal was totally different. It was very jagged. You couldn't get a catheter in there. I knew that organ implantation was not like the human. It was like the mouse was a better model. And finally, the way you put it implanted, the organ implantation in the recent months was so different. It was never done anything about it. And when I sent it to London, they were very angry and would almost try to get me rejected as a role model.
And you didn't give up. You remember this lady? She also was against him. The wound of opposition. Listen to these stories. Many blows in the face. And let me tell you an example.
2 years ago, and of course it was told he gave a lecture on ethics and about that. It was awful. And afterwards I thought, this is my chance. So I called him and I said, come here. I said,
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to go to Washington, where they have this thing on institution me, and I'm going to say something about that man that is going to be I'm very good at your lecture, man. But when you go in, I think it won't have any trouble.
Yeah.
But could I say another point too about the Nobel Prize winners? The two Nobel Prize winners. Because one was Watson, and one was the man who did what was it?
Max Pritz. Yeah.
What was his name?
Max Pritz, the other one?
Max Pritz.
Max Pritz, yes. The Austrian one, yes.
He was the most revered of all the Nobel Prize winners. He was a gentleman, a kind gentleman. It could have been. And I taught him. I was going up to my ministry one by one. Got the show, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, he's apologized in public. Because he kept me away, by the way, during those transplants over from my wife and children. And that's the thing I've not been given. But anyway, that's all. And so I will be going to America in November, and we still have a goal. You could come along. You should come along. I think you'll find it very interesting and fascinating. And then we can do some questions. And that would be, we have a little real history.
But my question to you, after all these blows from these tycoons, haven't you gave up, or you said, should I do something else? Haven't you thought to change? You're ambitious? Never. So in the summer 1975, after doing some work with trials with Patrick, one day I was coming back from helping a neighboring farmer who was sheep dipping. What does it mean, sheep dipping?
There is an activity insect. It gets in the wool,
Yes,
and it will eat with a little white skin,
yes.
and then it will start to bleed.
Mhm.
And then the flies will come in and the sheep will be.
So you want to help him, yes?
Well, the sheep did.
Okay. So,
Also,
okay. So coming back to home, I saw a yellow envelope on the mantelpiece next to clock where Ruth had put it after. It was still holding. I was still holding it when Ruth asked, "Aren't you going to open it?" It was from Steptoe. I opened it after moments of silence and hesitation, and there was a telegram: "Pregnancy test positive. Stop. Ring me urgently. Stop. Patrick." Do you remember this telegram? Yes.
and when she realized that every test, day 36, positive. And I telephoned Patrick, and he said that down. I think if we do it at the same time, but if we do it in medical, and he said that there was a few of them.
But unfortunately, this pregnancy was ectopic pregnancy. The first pregnancy was ectopic pregnancy. And, but Bob said whether ectopic or not, this is what the first human pregnancy began outside the womb. But the public response was not very much in encouraging him. Do you remember what the Jones family said about this pregnancy? They said that this pregnancy was not thanks success of the IVF, but it happened spontaneous pregnancy in the stump of the tube. This was the comment of the Jones family. I have their comment here. They were not trusting that the pregnancy happened from the IVF. But Bob Edwards decided to publish this. He went to the Lancet. Could you imagine that Bob Edwards, his article is rejected? Did it happen or not? His first article in the Nature journal was rejected. The article in the Lancet was rejected, but he didn't give up. He sent back a letter to them insisting. They said to him, shorten it a little bit. He did. Do some modification. He did, and then it was published. Am I right? Correct. Thank you. Sure. Okay, so in the summer 1977, we decided to abandon fertility drugs. It's a long story. I want to make it short. They said, we don't need any fertility drug, and decided to go back to nature. There were no alternative than to collect a single egg, ripening naturally within the mother. And then he said, hygonavis. Anybody knows what's hygonavis? Anybody knows what's hygonavis? Let me challenge, please, the audience. What's hygonavis? You say it, please. LH. Exactly.
So I have to calculate the population of nuts population.
Yes.
I know that they also have approximately 37 hours after the egg cells began. And this tiny technique from Japan.
Yes. Yes.
You're in something that 5 hours every 8 hours per day. And have a knowledge of the onset, not the high level, which when people make get expert and make the high level. That's far too late. And so we did this and do our best before.
So imagine the very, very primitive, crude methods he was using. He was not enjoying the luxury you have. He was working in a hospital. Can you pronounce the name to me, please? Kershaw. How a wonderful life was in Kershaw for him. He had a big office, super luxury office, with air conditioned, annexed to elegant meeting room with giant plasma screen TV, mini bar. That's the office of Bob Edwards. No wonder. Listen how he described his life in Kershaw. No wonder. No, this is not, it's just a joke. No wonder I was often to be found wandering down the corridors of Kershaw Hospital, unshaven, dog-tired, anxious about this or that hormone results. We did not often go to bed before 1 a.m., and we always rose up at 6 a.m. ready to check hormones again. Jane and I agreed to take turns at sleeping downstairs during the hours of darkness to check the hygonavis. That was his life in Kershaw Hospital. I was just joking about your elegant office. I know that you'll object about this. He has to wake up every 3-4 hours to check the hormones. And then I'm coming to the end. There are so many impressive, passionate stories about his life. If I'm a director, I'll make a very smashing movie about him. But I have to skip this for the time. I'm coming to the end now about when Patrick met Leslie. And by the way, Patrick also is a phenomenon. Do you know that before he do laparoscopy for the first time, he has to do 25 laparoscopies on cadavers, just diagnostic, to get the courage to do laparoscopy. And then came one day that one of his colleagues sent to him a nurse, said, why don't you do laparoscopy for her? And he did it, and he failed. And then they wake up the lady from the anesthesia, and Patrick was so frustrated, but he repeated the procedure for her next day. Sure. Yeah, the nurse, yes. Yes. Another story. Dr. Ruth Hinton, a medical officer of Bristol Central Health Clinic, referred the Brown couple for their infertility problem. And by the way, the Brown couple had a daughter from previous marriage to Joy Brown. But Leslie was infertile because of tubal problem. The 29-year-old Leslie had been operated upon for a tuboplasty because of tubal problem in Bristol Royal Infirmary, but still she has a bilateral hydrosalpinx. 26 February, Patrick knows that his chances to achieve success with Bob is fading. You know why? Because he is retiring next June. They were really lucky. They got it in time. He was retiring next June. Patrick decided to perform laparoscopy. 7th of August, something very important, I think, could be a turning point in their success. That Patrick step 2 did laparotomy for Louisa Brown, separated the omental fat, divided adhesions, and he did salpingectomy for the hydrosalpinx. At that time, there were no, information about removing hydrosalpinx. But I think this was a crucial point in the success. And Friday, listen, this is my last story. Friday, 12 November, the Judgment Day. Do you remember this day? This was a very important, it's a story. The story of replacing the Mrs. Brown embryos, embryo transfer. Okay? That day in particular was Sheena step 2 birthday. Okay, so the birthday of Patrick's wife was the day of embryo transfer for the Leslie. And Patrick was not happy because he arranged a dinner for Sheena in a restaurant, so Bob Edwards told him, please come before the dinner and we do the transfer. Patrick arrived at time, but the embryos were not still ready. Is it correct? What happened? Patrick said, I will go for the dinner, you stay with the embryos. Okay, so Patrick went to the dinner, ordered a fancy wine, enjoyed a beautiful night, and came back to Bob Edwards to find Edwards sitting next to the embryos, begging them to be ready. At that time, they were waiting till preparation. They were conversing together. You remember what you were talking to each other? Step 2 was telling him that he will take a cruise to Barbados next month to enjoy a vacation in the Caribbean. And Edwards told him, I have a scientific meeting in Holland. And they were discussing that they're not the last chance because he's retiring soon, Patrick, and they have no hopes for the future. Anybody knows, I don't work in IVF, but who do the embryo transfer? Is it the embryo lab technician or the clinician? You tell me. I don't know, actually. Who deployed the... But in your case, who did it? But in your case, in case of... Who deployed the embryos? Yes? And then who? Patrick or you who? The cervix? Yes, but I remember from what I read that Patrick threaded the catheter and Bob Edwards pushed it. This is what I have got in the literature, okay? Okay, what time was it? Do you remember? Because the birth of Louisa Brown was 11:47. At what time was the embryo transfer? It was nearly around this time, because when we came back from the dinner, okay, so actually the breakthrough was the birth of Louisa Brown. I brought you some pages, I flipped with you some pages in the life of Bob Edwards. His life is full of many passionate things. A story of success, determination, faith, love, and beloved by all people. On the behalf of everybody, not in this podium, but on the planet Earth, we all tell you thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Osama Shawi. Of course, Professor Osama is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology, but he is an expert in laparoscopy, endoscopy. This is why he says. But I see that Professor Edwards wants to comment on this. Please come over.
Is it on? Is it on? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say a few words. I mean, that was an inspiring talk. I've never heard anything like it before. I want it for my journal. I always want everything for my journal. So I'll be coming for your talk. Might I say that he should talk to the person who proposed me for the Lasker Award in the United States, because he said exactly the same thing. He said that Edwards was the greatest man in biology following Darwin. That's what he said about me in public. And you are saying the same things. I think you would enjoy that man. I will find his name and send it to you. But now I want to go on and tell you some of the things that you couldn't possibly have known. First of all, can I talk about the finances behind the birth of Louise Brown? We had to go to Oldham, so we had to, can you turn the music off? Oh, yes. We had to go to Oldham to get to Patrick Steptoe because the people in Cambridge would not do work with me. They said it was unethical, so they would not work with us. So I had to go to Oldham. So we tried to get Patrick Steptoe down to Newmarket, and the Medical Research Council failed, refused to give us the grant that was discussed. So we had to keep on going. Now, this meant we needed an immense amount of money because we had to hire cars, we had to hire make medium, we had to pay wages to the people who were doing the work. We were running out of money. It was getting desperate. When one day I was sitting in my house in Cambridge when the telephone bell rang, and when I went to answer it, there was a voice on the other end, a very strange voice, and she said, "Are you Dr. Edwards?" I said, "Yes." Said, "Well, I want to tell you something. I want to give you some money." Well, I thought it was a man called Mike Asher-Smith, who was a joker over the telephone, who would make funny noises down the telephone. So I said, "I know who you are, Patrick. You're just trying to fool me." Then the long pause. "I don't know who this man is at all. I want to help you." I thought, my God, if this is a good, I've probably ruined my chances by trying to get rid of her. And I went back and said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "I really admire your work, so I want to send you some money." And what she did, this girl, this wonderful American lady, she sent me a total of, I would think over the next 3 or 4 years, of at least £300,000, which paid every expense we had leading to the birth of Louise Brown. And when Louise was due, I telephoned her, or emailed, I can't remember, there was no email then, telegraphed to her, and saying, "Louise is due to be born tomorrow, and I want to tell you that we consider you have been an equal player in this act as we have." Well, I sent it, Patrick agreed. So that was how we got the embryos. Another thing I want to tell you, which is very sad, is that if I had to thank the people who made IVF possible, it would be my wife, who had to raise 5 children. We had 5 children, while I was going up to Oldham week after week at that time. And she was taking them to school and struggling. She was helped by her neighbours, but she lost my attention a long time to help with the children when they were growing up. So my wife is that number one. Number 2 is my children. Some of them are IVF children, by the way. I won't tell you who they are. That's confidential. But they all stood by me. I'll never forget them coming in this big and saying, "Daddy, why are these people criticizing you?" And I explained it. They understood it. They fully understood it. And they would not say anything bad to me. So they stuck up to me first. Next, Leslie Brown was a very quiet woman. She was quiet but incredibly determined. When things, I can't remember if her embryo transfer was the first, I can't remember, but she was with many other patients who were failing, and she knew what it was like to fail. And when she when they went to Oldham, Leslie would do all the decisions. Now, her husband, John Brown, was a wonderful man. He has been totally underrated. He was down-to-earth, working-class man. His job that he was doing was blowing up railway bridges. Can you imagine that? Because the British government had to cut a lot of railway lines, and so they were blowing up bridges, and John was blowing up bridges. So when he would come to Oldham, he was very talkative. He'd talk for an hour without stopping, whether we should transfer the embryo tonight or not, and who would make the decision? Leslie, we'll go now, she said. And that was even now. Now Louise is now married, and has a lovely little boy. By the way, it's another thing, Louise and the family have been wonderful help for us. They could have destroyed us. And the second baby, which was born in Scotland, they all supported us, even at a meeting where all the press were at the back, all focusing because we just got 1,000 babies, and we're having a big party in Bourne Hall, and all the cameras of the newsmen were focused on me. And on one side was Louise Brown, and on the other side was a second IVF baby, Alistair. Alistair's a Scots boy. He had an evil joke. He could make you laugh. And the pressmen came in and said, will we want Louise, Mrs. Brown, to be in the middle, the boy and girl to be next to Professor Edwards, and the others separate. And we will ask the questions, and we don't want Professor Edwards to say anything. And so I was at the mercy. If those two children or the parents had said, they led us up, they made this terrible time for us, they didn't tell us the truth, because around them everybody else was saying Edwards is telling lies, you've heard them. And these little boys were shouting, no, Dr. Edwards, Louis said, this man was wonderful to us, he was charming. The doctor said, oh, hi, what do you expect me to do with this man? He's made me. I can't criticize him, can I? And the press disappeared. And that was another thing. There was one more.
You have to tell the people that your wife was a scientist in genetics, also the same. Like
thank you. Thank you. I'm just reminded, when I was saying thank you to my wife, she was a geneticist like me. We started together superovulating mice, and we've done several papers recently together. Ruth Fowler. So she was following in Rutherford's footsteps to an extent, but she has retired now. I think 5 pregnancies killed her chances of science. And the last two were twins. That's right. Last two were twins. I have twins. So I have twins and 1 or 2 IVF babies. I've got the lot. There's somebody else, one last person I want to say.
Your mother, when she phoned you, she said, are you the Bob, the Edwards who they mentioned in the newspaper?
Who's that?
Your mother.
Oh, that's
right. She said, are you
yes.
Are you the one who was mentioned in the newspaper?
Yes. Yes, who was that?
We're bringing many memories anyway.
Yes, I just can't remember it. Yeah. I know that because they were so surprised.
Yeah, they were saying something bad about you in the newspaper, and then she phoned you.
That's right.
Your mother said about cloning.
Oh.
That's right. Cloning, not cloning.
Yes, when cloning came on, I was so anti it. I still am. I think all people who fool around with human embryos, even today, by the way, all these people are doing all silly things with embryos. I think it is absurd. You should leave the human embryo alone, go through normal procedures, and not fool around, because you will run into trouble if you're not careful. And transferring nuclei between eggs, I think, is silly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for all your contribution, and we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you.
Don't go down, because now the last part is that we are very honored at the Suzanne Mubarak Center for having Professor Edwards with us, with all of you, and we would love to present him with our shield, another shield. Yeah, but I would love to do this in the presence of everybody here. So may I ask the Dean of the Medical School to join us up here, and Dr. Salama Abdulmanam there. And actually, we would like to take a big picture with Professor Edwards, all of us, on the podium. So if you if all the representatives of the different societies would join us, Professor, please, Klaus, Professor Messines, Antonis, Botros, تفضل تفضل دكتور حسن دكتور يعقوب Professor يعقوب خلف from come over please Luciano please Grimaldi I didn't please only فكرني Dr. Waterloo, he's just arrived. Jean-Michel, come over. All the Jonathan, please, Jonas, please. Amr Nouri, Dr. Faisal Abdeladir, Professor Samih Zaki, Professor Abu Ghar, Professor Nabil Darwish. Please, come over, please. You represent the Egyptian Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, don't you? Yeah. Dr. Ahmed Al-Tagi, he's representing the please come and join us, the Egyptian Syndicate of Doctors. Professor Hidji, Professor Dubuisson, please, can you join us? Please. في مين تاني؟ Professor Muhammad Osman, Professor Ahmed Fatouh, عبد المجيد رمزي, Professor Ramzi, who else? مين تاني؟ طب عايزين نزق دي كده بقى نوديها كده طيب بس فين بس طب شيل بس ده مش بتتشال
تفضل يا حبيبي. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You are the star of the night. So.
I was surprised to see you leaving the program. How's life?
We'll sit and talk.
They need a fisheye camera together. You go in the middle, you go in the center. You always like to be in the focus of the. Go ahead, I know you.
Look who's talking.
No. I'm off center now. Oops. I wonder how he will carry all this. I mean.
This is presented from the Suzanne Mubarak Regional Center for Women's Health and Development to Professor Robert Edward on the occasion of 30 years of IVF recognition he gives and to the American 19th of March 2000.